Hello, everybody. This is Chase from the Patriotic Chronicles, and it's been a while. It's been since the last election, been before the last election even, and we are back with more content. Like I said, it's been a while, so I thought let's start off hot with the 2028 Republican primary candidates and seeing who would be the best choice and who should not run. Now you see I have the tier list already set up. A is the best choice. That won't be determined until the end of the video, so make sure you watch all the way through. Contenders are people that I think could easily win, not easily, but win the primary and win the general election and would be favorites in both. They have a reasonable chance, or people more that I could see that could most likely either A, make it to the primary easily but would have a tough time in the general election, or would have an easy time in the general election but might die in the primary. Underdogs are people that I see as both not favorites in any of the senses, but could have an outside chance of getting through. You gotta change everything is people who just aren't there yet. They have to change something and really get hot in order to make it to the primary, and would need to be a strong candidate in the general election. Not winning is just for people who simply are not winning if they run, whether it's baggage that they have or they're not popular enough. Not running is a section for people who are not going to run or shouldn't run, or in one case, barred from running. And two is simply people that I A, either do not know enough about, or B, they're so irrelevant that I don't even want to talk with them. That being said, we wasted 2 minutes just with the intro, so don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, so we release more content like this going forward. Starting off, we have Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia. I think Brian Kemp is an actual contender in this. Now, I think he would have a relatively difficult time through a primary, but it depends on how he is perceived and who else is running. He could be the Nikki Haley of this election without an incumbent or a former president in the mix, like 2024. He could capture the hearts of moderates, and he could still have that tie to the MAGA wing that makes him popular with them and can get him through some tough primaries. And I think in the general election sense, the Republicans need to nominate a moderate to someone not on the level of Donald Trump when it comes to MAGA. So I think Brian Kemp would be a good option. It also says, what does he end up doing? Does he end up running for Senate in 2028? Maybe he's just waiting to run for president. That is to be seen. Byron Donalds, who is the current representative in Florida, is currently, I believe, running to take over for governor duties once Ron DeSantis' term ends. I'm going to assume with that he is not going to run, that he has no intention of running, that he will most likely win the gubernatorial primary and basically win the general election for the governorship in Florida. So we most likely be doing that. Down the line, though, 2032 could be a year for Byron Donalds to really get serious. Chris Christie is an interesting one. I am debating putting him in not winning, because I think if he runs, he's just not going to get through it. But I'm going to go with you got to change everything. I think Chris Christie needs to change a lot, because he's done this 2 times now, and he's been very not successful each time. So something's got to change. He's still, again, he's more moderate than Brian Kemp. I could see him certainly being on the ballot for a no parties, or a very middle independent campaign. No labels is the political party. Apologies. But I could see Chris Christie being a good candidate in that sense of being a good moderate. However, within the Republican primary, he would have a terrible time going through a primary. And that's where I think he would be in the most trouble. Chris Sununu, I'm going to put they have a reasonable chance. Now, I firmly believe that Chris Sununu would more likely be a vice presidential pick more than he would be the presidential nominee. However, I still could see him running, and I think he would have an outside chance of being in the nominee. If he is the nominee, I would feel very good about putting money on Chris Sununu becoming president. He's very appealable to both Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and he would perform very strongly, I think, in general election, especially depending on who the Democrats nominate, which will be in the next video. But Chris Sununu, I could definitely see him being more of a vice presidential pick. I think he'd have a tough time going through the primary. He's a relatively known person within the Republican Party. It's just dependent on he has very anti-MAGA ties. I think that could come up to bite him if he were to run for president. Donald Trump is barred from running. If he tries to, he will go here because he can't legally win. If he tries to overturn it and put himself on the ballot, he will still lose. So I'm going to hope that he does not run for the sanctity of American democracy. However, Donald Trump Jr., I think, would be an underdog. I think he needs to really start almost campaigning now. He needs to lock in the support of his father and of the MAGA wing. He obviously has kind of the bona fide support of the MAGA wing because he's a Trump, but it might be basically voter fatigue in a sense. People are tired of the Trump name. They are wanting either a more moderate Republican, which Trump Jr. is more moderate than Trump is, but not by much. I could also just see him not running and working more in administration rather than in the presidency. Doug Burgum, who is the former governor of South Dakota turned Secretary of Agriculture, I believe. He's not winning an election. His performance in the 2024 general election got his name out there, and that's what he's looking to do. But the only reason he was in the primary debates was because he basically gave money to people to donate to him, and they in turn voted for him in those primaries. Only reason Doug Burgum got anywhere close to the debate stage. Smart, but it's not going to work next time. He's not winning. Next is Elise Stefanik. Now, Elise Stefanik is an interesting case considering all she's done has been in the House. She was the UN ambassador nominee, but dropped to hold the Republican majority within the House of Representatives. I could see her definitely being a vice presidential pick. If she runs for president, maybe I give her the underdog chance. I think she would need to have, I don't know how good of a debater she is. So we would need to really check that out, see what she's up to, and yeah, kind of go from there. Francis Suarez is the either current or former mayor of Miami. I don't know. He ran in 2016, I think. I don't know much about Francis Suarez. I don't think most people know much about Francis Suarez. So he's going to go in the who. Again, I know who he is. Just don't know enough about him to really rank him. Glenn Youngkin, I'm going to put under in the kind of in the same category as Chris Sununu. They're Republican governors of Democratic states. And they're very popular within their states. Glenn Youngkin may end up running for Senate. I doubt it. As of right now, he is... I think it looks like he's either going to run for president in 2028 or he's going to run for Senate. I believe Tim Kaine's will be up that year. It's either 2028 or 2030. He will end up running. They will convince him. Unless he's working as vice president or in the administration of the president. I think he's very popular, very well known throughout the country. People seem to like him a lot. So we'll see. Greg Abbott, you got to change everything, man. This gerrymandering stuff that's going on in Texas is highly unpopular. with the American people unless you are a hardline Republican. You do not like what's going on. It seems unfair. It seems petty, and it's just going to create more issues. And Greg Abbott is kind of the center of the issue when it comes to this all beginning. It's him and Gavin Newsom. They're kind of just fighting because they like to fight. I'm putting him. I'm not gonna put him in that he's not gonna win, but he would have to like change completely everything in order to even have a remote chance. JD Vance is going to go into contender. He's the current vice president, great speaker. People like him. He's more of a moderate than Trump. He's not Trump. He's not completely backed by him. The memes for JD Vance might honestly help him. I could definitely see him running. I am assuming he's going to run, which will also, if he runs, people like Donald Trump Jr., people like Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy are not going to run, which, if it's a very packed primary, would help JD out. So he's obviously the contender and is at this rate the best choice over Brian Kemp. Joe Lombardo is an interesting pick. He's the governor of Nevada. I don't think he really moves on from that. I don't anticipate him running. I can't completely rule it out, so I'm going to keep him in the... It's not that he got to change everything, so I guess I'm going to put him in underdog. He's likable. He's likable with Latinos. He's a Republican governor in a purple state at this point. 2 Democratic senators, but a Republican governor of a president. It's an interesting situation that's going on in Nevada. It's becoming more Republican as the years go on. I'm surprised no one's talked about redistricting there, as a matter of fact, but I'm sure they have, just hasn't been mainstream yet. I think Joe Lombardo is fairly liked, and he's just not well known, so he would need to work on his notability, kind of actually put himself out there. John James is the representative or former representative at this point, maybe, in Michigan. He's currently running for governor. So I don't think he's going to run for president. I think he'll be too busy running for governor in 2026, and he's not going to just serve 2 years and then dip. I don't believe. I know that's happened before, or even with vice president. JD Vance was senator for 2 years and then became vice president. So you can't completely weigh out stuff. I just think he'll be more busy with being governor, or if he loses election for governor, which is also in the realm of possibility. You can't kind of run for president after you lose for governor. So we'll see. Josh Hawley is, I think, an underdog. He's young. He's a great speaker. His issue is that he's a little flip-floppy on some issues. Sometimes, he's very pro-raising the minimum wage, but he's also very, backed by the MAGA side. It's a kind of a depends on the issue thing. He's fairly popular, I think, in Missouri. He would do well in the Midwest, which is where it matters the most. But I just don't know how well he would get through a primary. I'm not going to put him in you got to change everything, but he's got a lot to change, and he's got to really work on his charisma and solidifying his base. Katie Britt holds a position in Alabama, I believe. I don't know what she does, so put her in who. I know who she is. You see her with Trump a lot. I just don't know much about Katie Britt. My apologies on that. I'm gonna put her in who. Could be a vice presidential pick, maybe. Kim Reynolds is the current governor of Iowa, or senator, I believe governor. She's not gonna win. People don't like her. We're all gonna die one day. That's what it is, and that killed her chances. So, yeah, good luck, Kim Reynolds. Kristi Noem is a borderline not winning, but depending on what she does as Secretary of Homeland Security, we'll have to see. The whole killing the dog thing threw her off. She'd have a lot to change. Her holding a secretary position, maybe she gets put somewhere else in the next cabinet if the Republicans win. But I don't know. I wouldn't even want her as my vice president. So We'll see. Liz Cheney would not win. She would get absolutely demolished in the primary. Even moderate Republicans don't like her because she endorsed Kamala Harris. Yeah, she should not run. Nope, you should. If you're wanting to run for the Republican nominee, you should never endorse a Democrat. Marco Rubio is a easy person that I'm going to put in contender. Secretary of State, been in the media a lot, very popular. He's been with JD and Trump for the majority of the year. Especially, you'll see him all the time with stuff revolving Israel and Palestine, Ukraine and Russia. He is there and almost the center of attention. Marco Rubio is making a name for himself. I feel confident saying that he will be in the next administration. If it is a Republican administration, they might just keep him in Secretary of State because he's doing a decent job. He might be the presidential nominee. He might be the vice presidential nominee. We'll see. But Marco Rubio is definitely up there in contenders. One person who's not up there in contenders is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She will not win an election for the complete opposite reasons of Liz Cheney. Moderate Republicans do not like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I also really don't think she'll even run. But again, it's not out of the realm of possibilities with her, so I put in her in not winning. Someone who I don't think is going to run is Matt Gaetz. It would be political. He's already committed political suicide. He was the attorney general pick. He literally pulled himself out of that. He can't, and he's not going to run for president because of it. So Matt Gaetz is just not going to be the nominee. Mike Lee, who's the senator from Utah, I want to say, shows how much I care about the Senate. And Mike Lee, I don't know much about him. We'll put him in who? Mike Pence. You got to change everything, man. The 2024 election was not good on Mike Pence. One, not being the vice presidential nominee for the guy you're literally the vice president for. And two, when you ran for president, he didn't catch any traction at all. Fell out of contention fairly early. Think he would do about the same in the current. If he ran in another election, he's kind of on that same level. Chris Christie. Something's got to change with Mike, and I doubt it will. But if he changes everything, he'd be a great general election pick. I just don't think he'll make it. Mike Pompeo, I know who you are. You've been like missing in action since you left office. I don't even know if you want to run. I think like I saw it somewhere that you were like thinking about running, so I'm gonna put you not winning. Yeah, man, you gotta get your name back out there now. Nikki Haley's an easy also contender, being the person who stood up to Trump in 2024 in the Republican primary, doing relatively decently, as for going against the former president, winning states. She'll keep that support. Could be split against people who just voted for her because she wasn't Trump, but she may also gain some support because Trump's not on the ballot anymore. I think she'd be a strong contender. Better general election than primary. But we'll see. Next is Ron DeSantis. And they have a reasonable chance. I think Ron kind of burned a lot of bridges back in 2024 when he ran for president. He's been out of the media for the most part since then. He just did not. He looked good, but he looked like a lot of stuff was just rehearsed speeches. He didn't do great against Vivek. He did not do great against Nikki Haley. And he fell out of contention quick. I just don't think he's going to do well. Definitely a guy I could though see being the vice president, depending on who the presidential pick is. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the governor of Arkansas. Don't know enough about her to really put her anywhere on this list. I'll also go ahead and put Will Hurd, who is a representative or former representative from Texas, I believe. And I'll also put Tom Cotton in there, the senator from Arkansas. I know a little bit more about Tom Cotton. I know he's highly speculated to be Trump's vice presidential pick. Didn't end up getting the job, of course, but I think he would. Just don't know enough about him to really place him, at least in like, I would probably put him in like not winning because he's just not known. So that leaves us with 4 people left. Very diverse group, I guess. First is Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is not going to win if he runs. I really don't think he will. And it's just not. Yeah, Ted should not run. He should just enjoy his job as senator and kind of stay there. Vivek Ramaswamy will go next. I don't think he's going to end up running. I know a lot of people want him to run or to be the vice presidential pick. Don't think it's going to happen, simply for the fact that he's running for governor of Ohio, and he would be 2 years into that. I think he would want to at least finish a term and like be a term and a half in and then run for president. He'd have more support and background by then, so we'll see. I don't think he'd be in the administration. I think Trump would have put him in the administration if Vivek wanted to be in the administration. I think Vivek probably declined besides Doge, and he knew Doge was a short-term position. So we'll see on that. Tim Scott is next, another guy that was highly speculated to be the vice presidential pick. I think he would be an underdog. I think if he can make it to the general election, he would be a really strong candidate. But man, that primary will be rough on Tim Scott. He's not a great debater. His debates weren't awful, but he was just middle of the round. He didn't have bad debates, but didn't have great debates. Did better than Doug Burgum and Mike Pence did, and Chris Christie did. He did about the same as Chris Christie. Chris Christie's always been a great debater. He's just not popular policy-wise, but he got blew out of the water by people like Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis, and he fell out of contention fairly quickly. If he works on that, he might go more, and you got to change everything. But I feel he's an underdog story, and he would be a very popular or very good pick for the Republicans who honestly need to elect either a person of color or a woman, and is either the president or the vice president. And last, I have Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker Carlson is also in that underdog category. I think he's got the name recognition, very well known. His policies aren't hated. He's a great speaker. Outsider. He's got a lot going for him in the sense. It's just how well I think he would perform better in the primary than he would in the general election. There's a lot of baggage that comes with Tucker Carlson. We'll see what goes on with this whole Charlie Kirk thing. I know he's continuing part of it. He's going to my university, as a matter of fact, so I have to go there and do a video with that, but we'll see. But we gotta see what comes out of that, and that will determine a lot for Tucker Carlson. I could definitely see him running again. I think he would have an easy time going through the primary if he were to run, as easier than anyone else in underdogs. So I guess I'll put him at the front, but the general election I think would be really hard on Tucker. So as who I think would be the best choice out of Brian Kemp, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Nikki Haley, it's honestly a toss-up. It could be Nikki Haley for, she's a woman, person of color. She's got that going for her. She's not as MAGA, but still has those connections. Marco Rubio been doing everything in his power. Been a great Secretary of State for what it's worth. And is fairly popular within the Trump administration. It could be Brian Kemp, who's again another more moderate swing state former or governor. Will be a former governor by then. Could really pull in some votes in the east side of the country where it's most needed. But I think the obvious best choice is J.D. Vance. It all depends on how the presidency finishes out for Donald Trump. If it finishes out poorly, he's too connected to Donald Trump to really be anything. I would also feel bad for the guy who I guess would be a one-term senator, in the sense he served 2 years in the Senate, 4 years as vice president, which is just the Senate job, and then basically got screwed over running. But yeah, So this is my prediction, or not my prediction, my tier list. If you have any disagreements with me, please let me know. I'm more than happy to have a discussion on this. But yeah, thank you for watching the entirety of the video. I'm glad to be back. And yeah, hope you guys see you in the next one. Comment, like, subscribe, do all the funny stuff. See you in the next one. Peace.